Today's seminar webinar, I would say, is basically on the subject which everybody would understand is playing an important role in a time of such a pandemic, which is right now. We all know that this pandemic has affected globally, and this is the pandemic when we need to balance the public health as well as the health of the economy. And we all realize that technology is the main ingredient for the same, and it can play a big role. Technology, emerging technologies like AI, ML, and blockchain, it needs to be further demystified, and we need to actually implement it in a big way, apart specifically for these areas. So having a discussions on these areas, FICCI has already been active on this. We have been discussing on various technology-related aspects. We have today an eminent panelist, set of panelists, who is going to talk about how AI is going to be used for social good, especially at the time of this, how AI can not only let the businesses look for new horizons, but also be used as a tool for the socio-economic development. With these words, without wasting further much time, I would just like to welcome our set of panelists. Today we have with us Mr. Gaurav Agarwal, who's a co-founder for 1MG, Dr. Lavneesh Charana, Vice President, Government Affairs, Asia Pacific and Japan, SAP, Mr. Siddharth Gupta, CEO of Metal, and the session is moderated by Ms. Jyosna Jairam. We also thankful to our sponsor, SAP, for supporting such an initiative. It's a series of technology webinars which we will carry on from now. Next one most likely would be on 5th of May, which we will announce it soon. With these words, I hand it over to the moderator of the session, Ms. Jyosna Jairam, to kindly take over the proceedings of the session, and we all look forward to a really good powerful discussion. Over to you, Jyosna.
Thanks, Sarika, and thanks for having me here. I must say, as a last-minute step in, I'm quite thrilled to be part of a panel and part of a discussion that is going to involve individuals who are so closely and intrinsically linked to several initiatives in the AI and ML space. As a technology lawyer, I often work with companies who are making rapid technological advancements by the use of AI. And there is no doubt that the use of AI brings with it several benefits, such as potential for business, productivity, profits, etc. But there's this whole other facet or side of AI, which I wouldn't say is not widely talked about, but not talked about enough. And that is AI's ability to tackle some of our largest problems that we face at an ecosystem, at an environment, at a world level. And of course, there's no dearth of material that already shows us how far along we've come and how far along AI has come in this journey, particularly with respect to shoring up healthcare infrastructure or the use of AI in environmental issues, for example, disaster management, etc. But I still think that there's a lot more potential and a lot more to learn. So the use of AI with social good, much like other AI that currently is not within a regulated framework, brings with it some complexities. But I think that the key considerations when you are using AI for social good is something like accountability, trust, and responsibility. Because we are moving away from a human-centric approach to now relying on an algorithm or a machine to make decisions for us. And these algorithms are actually capable of making these decisions in an automated fashion, and often without the knowledge of the person who created them. And so while there's no doubt that it is going to be beneficial, I think that it needs to be able to operate within a framework of some sort of accountability. And I think it'll be interesting to hear about each of our panelists on how the practical use of the AI actually meets some of these requirements. The reason I say this, and the reason why I think that the use of AI in social good comes with a greater degree of responsibility. And let me just use a very simple example. As a user, as a consumer, if I know that a company that I have subscribed to is using an algorithm to predict what sort of content to push out to me, that is something that I'm far less concerned as opposed to the use of AI to predict whether I'm likely to get COVID or whether I need a surgery or participation of that AI in my surgery. So that is what I mean when I believe that there's a higher degree of responsibility and the ability for a user to be able to place their faith and trust in the AI in the same way that they have conventionally been placing it on service providers. I think that from this panel, I look forward to hearing, like I said, about the changes that AI is going and digital innovation is going to bring in each of their sectors and the challenges that they believe are going to be triggered by its use. I'm also keen to understand, if time permits, their thoughts and views on investments in AI, particularly now, given that we're facing a pandemic, what the key considerations are, because as far as I understand, and I'm no expert on how AI functions, but I believe that the costs of deployment and processing are also fairly significant. And given that there is an imperative need to actually push for investment as well as developments in AI, I'm keen to understand what our panelists' thoughts are on that as well. So I'm going to keep this short and wrap this up, but I think that we have a very interesting discussion ahead of us. Because we're uniquely placed to talk about something that is not established but still making its way. And I think that it's great that everybody in the ecosystem can participate and deliberate upon several issues and ways that we can use AI more efficiently for social good. So with that, I think I will hand it over to the panelists, and I would request each of you to give a brief introduction about yourself and then talk to us for a couple of minutes about your thoughts on this topic. If it's okay with everyone, I think we can start with Gaurav.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Gaurav. I'm one of the co-founders at 1MG, and I look after technology, product, and large chunks of the businesses as well. Now, 1MG is a healthcare player. It's the largest integrated healthcare platform. And with information, pharmacy, diagnostics, and consultations, we provide all core healthcare services on our platforms for consumers to utilize. Now, something that that the moderator said early on is that I believe AI will fundamentally change the way consumers interact with services, how consumers are, let's say, enabled to achieve their objectives. And one of the core aspects where healthcare will make a huge difference is healthcare. Now, one of the things that has always been the holy grail in healthcare has been the use of data to do predictive analytics, right? Can I look at the long-term health of a user and start to predict when he or she gets better? Can I look at your prescriptions, your diagnostic reports, your consultation summaries? Can I look at your parents' healthcare history and predict what you are at risk at? Can I look at your genetic data and start to predict what you're at risk at? And we are starting to see, as AI becomes more potent and as computing becomes cheaper, that a lot of these models are starting to become very, very real. And as we go along, I'd be happy to share some of the things that 1MG is working on. Through all the consumer data that we collect in an anonymized fashion, we've been able to build some of the most transformative AI models. And we are actually doing cutting edge research on publishing papers, et cetera, in top journals to bring some of these models to fruition. And we think healthcare is fundamentally going to benefit from the power of AI in the days to come.
That's true. Thanks, Gaurav. That was a great summary. And I think that you are actually in a great place to be now with the government actually opening up regulation on telemedicine, online consultations, which otherwise they sort of looked at with some sort of vagueness. So it's a good place to be in. And I'm glad that platforms like yours will allow a much closer interaction and involvement of patients and their data in actually improving the healthcare system. Thank you for that. Siddharth, if you could please go next.
Thank you. A very good afternoon to all viewers. Thank you, FICCI, for inviting me. Dr. Lavnish, Gaurav, and I think we're missing Prasanna, but Jyotsna, pleasure to be on this panel with you. For the viewers who don't know Mercer Metal, our genesis is rooted in India's startup culture. Metal was founded in India about 9 years back. So we are the original claimant to Make in India and Startup India story. We've been curating and administering online assessments which measure knowledge, skill, personality, and behavior. And we work with nearly 4,000 plus corporates across 91 countries, as well as 200 plus education institutes who use our platform to conduct examinations. So we work with a lot of marquee brands in education like IIM Bangalore, Indian School of Business, Narsing Monji, XLRI, Amity, and others. As a company, we've been using AI in many aspects of our organization and offerings. I'll speak about our capabilities later during the webinar. But one use case which is predominant is around remote invigilation, where in our industry we call it remote proctoring, where we use AI to prevent unfair means during an online examination. So how can we take examination to everybody's house, where people with laptop or desktop can be taking an examination without losing the academic integrity? So that's one big use case. Other than that, we use AI in a lot of processes of Mercer Metal, and I'll speak more about our capabilities later. For me, a quick introduction. I've been part of Mercer Metal leadership for the last 4 years. Have been part of this growth of Metal from a very small startup to becoming the largest online assessment company. Currently, in the role of CEO here, I've also had the privilege of being a colleague of Dr. Lavnish Chanana. We both spent some time together in SAP. I've spent about a decade in SAP before joining Mercer Metal, and also have worked for entities like EMC as well as Hewlett Packard. So great to be on this panel. Just opening remarks on AI and impact on education, and especially given the fact that COVID has completely stopped education across the world, not only in India. I think all of us on the panel as well would agree that education has been one of the greatest leveler in the progressive world, especially India. I don't think any one of us would be on this panel if it was not for the education that we got imparted with. But still today, good education is still geo-specific. And I think a lot of good educational opportunities are still hidden behind very tall entrance exam boundaries. So I feel in the advent of online, open university and AI, these barriers will totally get flattened in the few years to come, and opportunities for educating yourselves will open up for all. Bit of a sweeping statement, and I'll risk it on the FICCI forum. Education sector has been very slow in adopting technology, and including the basic format of online. The hypothesis seems proven because COVID has completely halted education across the world. It's estimated as of last week that nearly 1.5 billion learners across 188 countries are sitting idle today. And we have all education setups scurrying around looking for virtual classrooms and ability to take their assessments online. And I think I feel this pandemic will lead to an accelerated tech adoption by the education sector, including AI. And I think, we would see better times to come in the education sector. So I'll keep my remarks on AI in particular for later part of the webinar. So that's it from my side. In the later part of the webinar, I'll speak about what are the 3 or 4 areas where AI will most impact the education sector, and what is Mercer Metal doing to accelerate that adoption. Yeah, over to you back, Jyotsna.
Thanks for that. I think that you're right. I would also hazard a statement and say that the education sector does need some amount of help when it comes to digitization. And I think that now what's going to be a knee-jerk reaction, because there is no other choice but to get online, I think that platforms like yours will really be able to assist them to sort of seamlessly move into this alternative way of learning, if I may call it that. Thank you. Dr. Lavnish, if I could request you to please say a few words about yourself as well as your thoughts on this topic, please.
Thank you, Jyotsna, and thank you, FICCI, for inviting me to this very important topic on AI for good. And we are happy to partner, FICCI, with you on actually bringing about the awareness and appreciation of this topic, AI for good. SAP, I'm sure all of you are aware, we are the largest enterprise software company with more than now 13,000 customer organizations in India, and around 13,000 employees in India, and we are really privileged to strengthen the IT backbone of Indian industry, and in many sense of the world, the government also, the kind of work that we do with government. Now, the reason I feel, and I handle the government affairs for Asia Pacific and Japan, and India is one of the countries that come under that. And when I say government affairs, I handle the whole policy, thought leadership, and business support and engagement with the government on key strategic areas such as AI that we are talking about today. The interesting part that I wanted to, leave as a thought triggering statement as an introductory thing is that all of us talk about why AI is important and what probably AI can do. To that stage we have reached, in terms of the importance and the potential use cases, applications, benefits of AI for all sectors, including the social one, is now fairly well understood. Now, so I think more important as a country and more important, at this stage particularly, is that we understand as to how do we make AI a reality to actually move. I think that to me would be, and the reason why how is far more important than the why and the what is because AI is not a vertical discipline. AI is a horizontal discipline. And from that perspective, it requires invariably the domain expertise along with the cross-stakeholder collaboration. And that's what makes it more challenging. That's what makes it more challenging. And that is, to me, those who have been able to handle this part have actually been able to derive the benefits of AI far quicker than we can see. And if you see, if you read any paper, you know, the race to actually acquire IPR and patents on AI is something that is being directly linked to the national competitive power per se. So the competitiveness is directly getting linked. And one of the measures of competitiveness is actually coming out to how many, what are we doing in artificial intelligence and the related technologies. So it's a very, very interesting area, and particularly given the current situation we are in, that is actually, that's a great opportunity to spur the innovations in this field. And that to us is a huge opportunity that all of us can collaboratively come together and think of use cases, whether it's the epidemic spread, whether it's health, whether it's education, whatever sectors, logistic, transportation, whatever sectors have been adversely or, otherwise impacted, we have an opportunity to move forward. And it will be good to engage with the panelists here to see what could be done on few of the strategic as well as on the operational areas. Happy to contribute as we move forward. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Dr. Lavnish, and you're absolutely right. I think that in talking about all of the background history to this, we forget that the most important thing is the how, and you're right, we have reached that point, and so it does require some sort of a collaborative effort to take us forward. And the point that you mentioned on actually protecting the IP that's involved in this, of course, it's important to monetize it. But I think that when you are using AI, particularly for social good, I suppose that you also need to consider the benefits of opening that up to various sectors who can work together to develop something in a more collaborative fashion. And I think there have been some talks about how also for contact tracing apps and things like that, if you open up the code, is that going to be beneficial? And perhaps that's something to consider as well. So thank you very much. I'm not sure if we have Prasanna on the line. Do we? Has he been able to join us?
No, Josna, I think he's not there, so you may like to carry forward. Josna, I'd just like to intervene for one housekeeping announcement. We have been getting requests from the viewers for the speakers to be a little louder and speak a little closer to the microphone so that they can hear. We have around 122 viewers watching right now, so that's just a request to the panelist. Over to you, Josna.
Sure, we'll do that. All right, so I think then we can just start off with a couple of questions that I'm going to ask. And the first question is not really specific to any sector. So I think that I will open it up to the whole panel, and perhaps you could just speak for a minute or two about it. And this is a very basic question. And just if you could just share with us how you believe that AI and ML can transform or change the sector that you are engaged in, particularly post-COVID-19. And perhaps Siddharth, you can start.
I think we'll follow the same sequence that you laid out, and Gaurav could speak.
Okay, sure.
Gaurav is also the CTO founder, so I think he is the most knowledgeable on the subject as far as the subject goes. And then I'll come in and I'll tell you a CEO's view to it, how we simplify whatever Gaurav says and implement it in our organization.
Sure.
Well, I'll try to simplify. I think what's going to happen post COVID is probably fundamentally AI's ability to deliver solutions is not going to change. But how consumers access healthcare is going to undergo a sea change, right? We're already seeing with hospitals getting shut, with your local, shops, etc., affected, with diagnostics affected. A lot of services are in an unprecedented fashion moving online, right? Doctors are doing teleconsultations online. Suddenly, where there was a lot of pushback on doing online consultations, etc., the government has come out with a policy that has enabled it. There are e-prescriptions being written. There are medicines being delivered online. There's diagnostic tests that's happening. there's suddenly talk of accelerating, a nationwide network of teleconsultations. There's a bunch of entities working on that. So I think what's fundamentally going to happen post-COVID is that the nature of healthcare is going to change, where it's going to maybe change from being this siloed healthcare entity to a more digital entity, which is going to enable data becoming accessible and available at a very large scale. So what AI needs fundamentally is that it needs a lot of data to work with, right? And it needs patients on which it can model that. And that is fundamentally going to change post-COVID. Now, a few of the areas where, let's say, AI is going to be super effective. One is going to figure out, let's say, based on comorbidities, etc., if it can model and if it can prove whether you are at a higher risk or a lower risk and give recommendations that way. We're already seeing how people who have, let's say, some other additional diseases, then they're at a higher risk of COVID-19 infection or even mortality. And I think that AI is going to be super useful there. AI is also going to be useful in general in figuring out your health risk assessment based on what your current parameters are and based on what your, let's say, genetic history is, what your genealogy is, what your genetic tree is like. As I mentioned earlier, AI is going to be super useful from a disease progression standpoint, right? So one of the things that, for instance, 1MG has worked on is, can I take all the healthcare data that I've been able to collect on you so far and predict whether you're going to get better or get worse in 6 months' time? Right? This has not been possible hitherto. I cannot tell a diabetic patient that, hey, based on your habits and based on how you're taking medicines, etc., right? This is how, are you going to get better or are you going to get worse? Is your disease going to be better? And I think what AI is going to do is it's fundamentally going to change healthcare from curative to becoming more preventative, right? And bring all these data points in. And I think that trend is going to accelerate post-COVID because the delivery of healthcare is going to undergo a sea change.
Thanks, Gaurav. Siddharth, if you could just tell us what you think about.
So maybe I'll summarize how I understand our capabilities and then come back to the education sector and then come back to what Metal is doing in using AI. So as I understand is AI needs a deep understanding of AI algorithms, and AI algorithms obviously don't limit you to structured data like 10 years back. Now you have structured and unstructured data that can be looked at by AI algorithms. You need to have in an organization the ability to tailor these algorithms to use them for the use case that you want to attack. So that's the second capability, that you should be able to understand these algorithms in detail, and you should be able to tailor them to attack the use case that is relevant to your organization. Then, as Gaurav said, you need a lot of training data set. So either as an organization, if you are working in a particular field, you have that training data set already, or you would rely on open data sets that are available. And then you need to pass these data sets through the algorithm to train it. And obviously then you need a validation loop to be closed and improvements to be done. So that's how I understand our capability to use AI. Luckily, we have a very talented team in-house to do this. I believe, in the education sector, so I always try and break complex problems into smaller sets of things that can be impacted quickly. So use of AI to first improve what we are already doing in the education sector. So removing all administrative tasks for a professor or a trainer. So I'll just give you an example. If you speak to any professor or a trainer, he'll crib about the fact that he spends more time assessing, grading, and doing routine administrative work than spending more actual face time with the student where the learning happens. So today, AI-based technologies are available which can drastically reduce time taken by professors to do all these tasks. So you can have ML and AI algorithms which can automate grading completely. It can automate feedbacks to the students so that that piece of it totally goes away. Scheduling of classes, scheduling of assessments, all of that can be completely taken away from the professor, and he could spend more time figuring out how to creatively teach the student more. So that's the basic place where AI can impact right away, because the technology is there and it needs to be just adopted by the education ecosystem. Personalized learning is another space where this sector is guilty, and just like pharma sector, so one pill size for all patients is what I say. So it's like graded class 1, class 2, class 3, or first year, second year, third year. Everybody has to follow the same level of education, and it doesn't matter whether you can learn faster or slower. Everybody has to read the same syllabus and same book. I think that is what education sector has been most guilty of. Today, using technology, learning can be tailored to every individual, and I feel next 10 years is going to see that. And even in the pharma sector, I'm sure Gaurav would agree with me that everybody doesn't need to take a 500 mg or a 250 mg. It can be tailored to every patient as well. So I think personalized learning is one space, and because it can all be digital, it can be very quickly delivered to this space. So that's the second innovation that AI can have. Third is the final frontier, where questions like these need to be answers. Can AI help create content which is fastest to teach the human brain? Can we replicate our best teachers and formats? I believe it's possible today. I believe if this use case is attacked with all earnestness, we can get there. I think very little investment has gone there. I think that'll get accelerated post this COVID. Last bit on how is metal using AI? Our primary use case, as I spoke about, was remote proctoring. So that's our industry terminology for using web camera feed to ensure that when any applicant is taking an exam, he or she doesn't use any unfair means to get an advantage over other students. So he cannot cheat in any way. So two aspects of AI capability. One is computer vision capability, as well as speech processing capability is what we use to do object detection, verification, face verification, and a lot of other things to ensure that exams don't need to be confined to a particular classroom or a particular institute or a particular time slot either. So students should be allowed to take the exam wherever they are. And even in this kind of a lockdown world, education does not need to stop. So that's one area where we are helping a lot of education institutes today automate their examination system. Many people were in the midway of their semester exams. Many entrance exams were announced and they couldn't happen because of the lockdown. So we are working really, really hard right now, helping nearly 400 odd education setups. They're all talking to us, and we're trying to solve for this problem that people are facing today. And AI has a very key part there. We also use AI a lot in evaluation of spoken English and written English as well. So English has been the kind of passport for well-being for many parts of the world, and that's one area which we've completely automated. So using speech processing for not only detection of speech but evaluation of speech quality, speech to text conversion, or using NLP for conversational AI bots. Evaluation of written English is what we use for. So uh, these are the primary use cases where Mercer Metal is today using AI. But I believe this is just baby steps. I think there's a lot of innovation which is possible with the kind of talent that we have in not only Mercer Metal but in the country, that we can apply these to make huge impact on the country overall.
Thanks for that. I think Prasanna has been able to join now, so maybe we'll just quickly hop over for a quick introduction and then come back to Dr. Lavnish on his thoughts on the question that I posed. Hi, Prasanna, welcome. Sorry that we got started ahead. So I think just to get things back in motion, could I request you to please give us a brief introduction about yourself, as well as a couple of lines on what you think about this topic, which is the impact of AI for social good, the use of AI for social good.
Yeah, thanks, and sorry for being late. I was confused with the link. Okay, coming back, I am Prasanna Lohar. I work for DCB Bank. So at DCB Bank, I work as a head for architecture and digital and the innovation. So I run some of the industry level programs like Innovation Carnival for startups, academia, wherein we work closely with the corporates, accelerators, and various governments. So I personally mentored more than 250 plus startups in various areas, including AI or blockchain. I work closely with the FICCI as a co-chair for a blockchain initiative in India. I co-chair IMA for blockchain cryptocurrency, ethical cryptocurrency rather initiatives in India. So coming back, I think AI for social good, which is, and that too, when we are in the era of COVID and post-COVID, we'll have so many things to do, right? So these days, I'm interacting a lot with other corporates, fintech companies, impact on fintech and startup companies, looking at how emerging technologies are becoming traditional technologies now. Like we talk about AI or a blockchain or a IoT as emerging tech. But I think post-COVID, in a nutshell, you will find in 1 year, rise of AI, blockchain, IoT will become a traditional technology and will aspire to do something more on top of AI as a AI plus or blockchain as a blockchain plus. So coming back, what customer experience is driving that? Customers are now looking at something to do from home. Say, for example, all the initiatives from bank or a telecom or any other industry has to be there on mobile. How everything starting from customer onboarding, customer servicing, customer engagement, everything has to be there on a digital media, digital channels like mobile or any other. We will look at how customer will look as an interfaces. Today we are interfacing with the laptops, internet, or through mobile phones. Tomorrow interfaces will become invisible interface, wherein you will find AI and the role of AR VR technology will be prominent. How to make these interfaces invisible, like through voice technologies or facial technologies, or to look at augmented reality or virtual reality becomes tomorrow's interfaces of a human being. I think that's a start of a new era, and I think AI or blockchain has a very good role to play on a social good. So coming back, how it can be really helpful. Can we not imagine when a particular instance which is occurring at Wuhan kind of a city, and that particular instance is becoming a major crisis, more than a world war for every country in the world. So can we not imagine another kind of a social ecosystem which is agreed between all the governments of all these countries with the help of health ministries, and we are understanding data from each countryman of these countries, so that would have really not reached to those lakhs of people are getting hampered because of this, but the quantity of this damage could have been quite lesser if you would have really understood on the online on a real-time basis what is the health index of every country year on. So I think AI will play major role, where will public health registries, if they bring on health data, since somebody is born till whatever is data is there, so we can always accumulate that data and give a intelligent notification. So many people in India in this area are because of this particular disease, or so many people in another area are in a good condition, and if another area would like to become that, I think these are the rules to be taken care. I think this kind of a thing, when we are talking, government is collaborating with multiple organizations, non-profit organizations, and many country government are collaborating on a health issues. I think these kind of a technologies coming for a real cause will be really good to see in a future. I think we have a one app like Arogya Setu, which is one of the example, but we can make it more intelligent how to use the data. I think that's in a nutshell from my point of view, and maybe we'll discuss further more as the discussion goes on.
Thank you, Prasanna. And as you rightly pointed out, the treasure trove that data is something that, of course, we can put to real benefit. And I suppose that if AI can function in this way, with the data yet being aggregated or anonymized to the extent possible, that would also allay a lot of the privacy concerns that individuals may have about the use of their data for so many different purposes. But I'm sure there is a way to achieve that. And thank you for your thoughts.
Yes, there is a way to achieve that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to Dr. Lavnish on the first question that I posed, which is a very general question on how you believe that AI and ML can transform your sector post-COVID-19. So Dr. Lavnish, if you could just share your thoughts with us, please.
Thank you, Jyotsna. From a technology solution standpoint, Jyotsna, what if you see the COVID has had an impact broadly on three broad areas for organizations or companies. First is the supply chain. The entire supply chain is being rethought. Now, when I say supply chain, that means we are rethinking about alternative suppliers. We are rethinking about repurposing factories. We are seeing totally new phenomena of automobile manufacturers turning over to ventilators, perfume manufacturers to turning over. So the whole repurposing. So one big area is the whole supply chain. Second big area is the whole finance, right? And from a financial perspective, whether it's the cash flow management or delayed payments or receivables and all, and the third most important pillar is the employee in terms of the work from home arrangement, in terms of remote team management and all. These are the three broad areas that suddenly COVID brought to light, that look and suddenly the preparedness of industry, preparedness of consumer community, preparedness of everybody got tested when we had a situation like this. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean going forward? Going forward, I see an emergence of a totally new, kind of enterprise, which we at SAP love to speak about, intelligent enterprises. That is, the focus on the high value tasks would become far higher than the focus on automation that we are so used to, right? So from a routine answering of a query, a customer query, I think a hyper personalization, a proactive integrated response to what something similar to what Siddharth and Gaurav mentioned, to a requirement which is not existing but one can anticipate would tend to become the new normal. That is going to happen, sooner than later. The opportunity that this particular situation has brought in is it has brought to surface many new use cases which we thought probably can wait for some more time, in the life cycle of evolution, and now suddenly we find those have become really, really important. And some of these sectors, whether it's health, transportation, and actually will be finance, would be taking a big role. Now, what are some of these use cases that we'll see post-COVID when it comes to? The biggest thing that we will see will be the whole digitization of the supply chain. We will be seeing areas, use cases, which will address the whole demand as uncertainty. That's a big area. We would also see areas, which will have a direct, impact on the remote team management. Now, remote team management as a topic may sound fairly simple, but when you get into that, remote team management has a direct impact on productivity, has a direct impact on employee productivity and hence the organizational productivity. Now, going forward at a country level, what I see post-COVID happening. So this was what at company level, what is happening. At a country level, what I see, we have all been talking about, we have all been speaking about the vision, India's vision for AI, India's policy on AI, India's plans for AI. I think that would now get expedited, that would now get hastened in terms of a new vision, a vision that will look at the well-being of citizens, a vision that will look at economic prosperity, given that we have an opportunity, a vision that looks at public security, in terms of providing safety and security, and a vision that looks at a quality of life. I think with the four pillars, and you will also see one thing, and one important thing, if I'm taking some more time, one important thing that you would have observed during COVID is the whole integration of efforts of organization who used to be earlier siloed. So the complaint about data being not, data quality and data being not available very soon would tend to diminish as a natural phenomenon. And what we will see is the urge to use this particular opportunity to actually move forward. So from a technology standpoint, we will also see huge push to robotics. Given the dependence on employees, manual this thing, we may also see some push to robotics. And in India, we can challenge the impact on manpower, impact on the employment, etc., which is okay. So some of these changes would characterize the post-COVID era in India, in my view.
Thank you, Dr. Lavnesh. That was a great summary of what is to come. And I don't think that it sounds bleak at all. And I think that even though we have AI probably being pretty replicable in terms of a lot of the roles that we perform, there should be a way to collaborate together. And in that sense, only look at it as an enhancement or a development. So thank you. I'm just going to, I think we are, sort of short of time. So I'm just going to run over some of the other questions that are sector specific for the benefit of our viewers as well. And perhaps the need of the hour is healthcare. So Gaurav, I would request you to take this up. And this is in relation to a health emergency like COVID-19 that we are facing. And I think you briefly did touch upon this, but perhaps if you were to delve into it a little bit more, what sort of support or benefits can these technologies offer, such as AI and ML, at a time where we're faced with a health emergency like this, where we can no longer just look at it as a consumer offering, but dealing with it as an emergency per se?
Yeah, look, I mentioned a few, but look, if you look at it, what AI can do at a very, very high level, right? It has the ability to start to find patterns that are similar without necessarily being taught a lot about it, right? That's really the power of AI. And I think one of the ways it can help is it can start to identify patients who are at higher risk. So let's say it knows who has, if certain disease type patients, if certain, let's say BMI patients, if certain genetic background patients are highly susceptible to COVID infection, and that's something that AI can help with. AI can also help with areas that are potential hotspots or areas that are going to be potential hotspots because of, let's say, how many, let's say there's an area which is surrounded by potential hotspots or has certain characteristics which are found in other areas as well, then AI can help with that as well. I think it can start to help with prediction of how the cases may pan out based on what we have seen in the past. So there's a ton of ways in which AI can start to see patterns that exist in small areas and then start to extrapolate them in larger areas, especially to help deal with the COVID situation, right? It can start to, for instance, say that when lockdown happens in limited areas, right, how does it help with the COVID case expansion in the rest of the country, for instance? So there's a ton of ways in which AI and machine learning can help.
Right. Thanks, Gaurav. Another question that is again sector specific, and Prasanna, I know you touched upon data generally and of course the improvements that we're making in the healthcare space, but particularly in the financial sector, again, given how our economy is going, what do you believe will be the role of AI and ML in creating a social impact in the financial sector? Sorry, I think that you may be on mute, Prasanna. We're not able to hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So I'm coming. So I think if you look at before COVID and during COVID and post COVID, every organization has a way to really surpass the situation. Are they ready, not ready, or how they are really taking this opportunity to give back to the society, give back to the customers? I think if you look at financial industries and banking industries, we need to really see how we can really serve customers with the help of AI and ML technologies. What we are looking at as a bank, how customer onboarding can happen seamlessly. Earlier, my staff or branch staff used to visit a customer at his home or at his vicinity, or with the help of a biometric where touch is required. I think what banks will look at how this journey will become so simple of eKYC, which is Aadhaar-based ecosystem, followed by the video KYC, where we can incorporate AI and ML wherever the audit is required, concurrent audit is required. So I think there are multiple such opportunities for serving customers, engaging customers, how these customers are really performing onto the banking transactions, where we can leverage on artificial intelligence as a technology to understand the customer behavior on a particular transaction, as well as there are non-banking use cases where we can utilize AI and ML for a fraud reduction. Just to understand, the fraud in the last 30 days has gone multifold, maybe more, maybe I think 30, 40, or maybe more than times. So I think artificial intelligence and will understand all of a sudden how is the surge of transactions or fraudulent transactions happening, and what all measures we need to take against these transactions that can be either can be done operationally, but with the adoption of AI and ML, I think we'll be able to simplify these things. So now what we have seen during this time, the branches are operating, not operating full time. They are operating, I think, for 2-3 hours or even or 4 hours. At time they are not operating. What does it mean? It means that operational efforts which we were putting for last so many years at branches, or operational efforts which I was as a banker, I was looking at operational effort for reconciliation or a settlement. So much of efforts cost we have put as a banks in this area, that can be really surpassed with the help of a technology like blockchain and AI. I can really remove those man in middle and bring on a lot of automation with the help of robotic process automation, or a next stage of robotic process automation, that is intelligent automation. And just imagine next 1 or 2 years, if every organization has that strategy, just like everybody has adopted internet and mobile, let this next 2-3 years mix AI, blockchain, RPA, IoT. Let this technology become a normal technologies. Then only will support other non-banking challenges like health and other issues. I think we are blessed that in year 2020 we are equipped with very good internet or very good facilities around remote handling. Just imagine if the same situation would have happened in year 2000, what we would have done. Right, would have just messed it around. Like there was no possibility. How do we really do this operations, everything? I think over a period of internet adoption, mobility adoption, we have evolved many more business models. I think it's a chance and opportunity for countries to surpass these challenges which are happening and adopt seamlessly AI, blockchain, robotic process automation. I think that's the opportunity. I think tomorrow's world, when millennials or a current customer also will be expecting something seamless experience wherever they are moving, they want everything there and there here. I think customer today will become more hyper personalized. I think these expectation of serving customer or to keep engage that customer to that bank or to that organization, I think these technologies will make a better role. Now, let's say example of UPI was a very good ecosystem among all the banks. Similarly, I think collaboration has to happen among banks with the RBI in coming in picture or government in coming picture, so that the way we are operating on multiple core banking system individually, or we are operating with multiple reconciliation systems individually, or we are operating multiple mobile banking apps individually. I think this is a time we have to think of how this can be seamlessly unified, the way we have unified payment interface through UPI. Similarly, there are other areas we have to work together, so that in such situations, in current situation, we should not give some kind of a adverse experience to the customers, because customers are now becoming more intelligent, are becoming more expecting a lot from the telecoms or retail industry or banking industry. I think adoption of these technologies will become very, very easy. I'll give one small example and then I stop. Say example, today I go on mobile banking app and do some kind of a contract that at this date my bill payments has to happen. Just imagine tomorrow my tube light or my refrigerator or my car are doing this contract on themselves or those devices to make this operation seamlessly. And that's the era we'll have to aspire for. Today we are at collaborative economy, but tomorrow sharing economy and this kind of autonomous world will drive more better rise of AI, blockchain.
Sorry, I think I sort of lost him. Are you all also unable to hear him?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, I'm there.
Okay, sorry. I think there was just a little bit of a glitch towards the end of what you were saying, but I think that I got the gist of it. And
yeah, what I was saying, I think with the help of a government support, regulator support, certainly we will see some very good mandates will come in front of us. Every bank should go on a video KYC, or every bank should have a conversational banking app, just like mobile banking is a mandate, or just like eKYC is a mandate. I think regulatory should come with such mandates so that this experiment become actual app or actual stuff for the end users.
Thank you, Prasanna. I think you're absolutely right. We're finally at a time where the government and technology are walking hand in hand, and now the reliance of the government on technology has also become far more than what it was years back. And you're right. So I think that the support needs to come in form of regulation and also to look at the existing framework that we have to sort of adapt it to enable these technologies to function in the way that they need to. For instance, this whole eKYC requirement, or the fact that you still need a physical verification, is perhaps something that you need to think about now, given the current climate and the inability to carry out these functions. And when you have highly regulated sectors like the financial sector, while on the one hand we are all looking at digital innovation, I think that has to be accompanied with some sort of regulation that enables it. So I hope that we get there soon. So I think that we are sort of coming to the end of this. And Dr. Lavnish, I think one of the questions here I'd just like to pose to you, and after that we can probably open it up to the questions that the viewers are asking. And this is on the potential, again, that AI has. It probably sounds a bit repetitive, but do you believe that there is a lack of awareness in the manner in which that we can use AI efficiently towards social good? And what do you think that the government and the industry need to do, I would think collaboratively, so that we are able to put this to maximum use and to its potential?
Okay, thank you. This is indeed a great point. The area of awareness about AI. Let's see what this awareness actually means. So one is, as a user or as a developer, I'm aware what AI can do. But had that been the case, all of us would have been, asking for more and more AI development by now. So what's in it for me? To improve the awareness of and the potential, I think there are a number of steps that can be taken. The first and the foremost step is we are still far away from a stage where AI, or for that matter, emerging technologies, are a part of our academic curriculum in the manner it should be. Now, once we have it in the academic curriculum, automatically the awareness of the next generation on AI would be taken care of, and that then there will be a pull factor on the others to follow. Something similar to what we saw in mobile, development. So that is one area. Second area that we also need to do. There's a dearth of capacity when it comes to government's own push to AI. Not because there is a lack of intent, but because there is a lack of capacity and the skill to actually push it the way. Obviously, we don't expect the government to have the domain of AI, but still the efforts that have been done by this government have been superb in terms of ensuring there is a collaboration with the industry. So that's the second point. First point is we get AI into the academic curriculum to increase awareness. Second, government can set an example by being so for example, the Arogya Setu app, while if it in such a short time, an initiative taken collaboratively by government and industry became a model benchmark in terms of number of downloads, in terms of number. So whatever in India, in countries like India, governments take on to them and work collaboratively with industry, that kind of becomes a benchmark, and that becomes now. And there are few things that we are already doing. Talk about the income tax, the data warehousing, the CBDT project, etc. We have started part. And the last thing that we now probably will need to see is a programmatic coverage of AI as a national program. AI as a national movement that is there, maybe something not at the scale of a Make in India or a Swachh Bharat or a this thing, but to an IT community and fraternity. If we have that program, there will be a pull that everybody will be moving to actually gather. Unless we create the awareness, and without creating awareness, we develop the solutions, we will be putting the cart before the horse. So that is very, very important. The urge in the end consumer and end user's mind to actually ask for solutions which will help, it should be a pulling factor and not really what I can offer, in terms of. So awareness to me is a very, very important point that you highlighted.
Thank you, Dr. Lavneesh. And I think, I mean, if I may say, along with awareness also, if there is, and I don't necessarily mean in terms of statutory regulation, but some sort of a framework that serves as a guiding set of principles in the development of AI itself, I think that we will go far along in the development and actually the different uses that we can put AI to.
Exactly. I think, but in India, where we have come to is a broad strategic, intent and expectation. We have come to that stage. We have got the task force set up. We have got the task force report. I think there are global examples like EU now talking on the framework guidelines, which can probably be Indianized and used for India. I think we will move very swiftly on this going forward.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we have come to the end of this webinar, but I'm just going to take one question from...
Yeah, Josna, just one view.
Sure.
One view from my side. I really certainly agree with the Dr. Lavneesh. And I think what's happening on AI per se, or any of the other emerging technology per se, say example China, they have an AI strategy as well as the AI implementation done across the country. Or if you look at other countries also, AI adoption or AI is quite huge. I think this is a impact of the educational system. These countries has incorporated AI as a normal course, just like one of the streaming engineering. Or I think that is happening now. Some of the standards up to 10th, the AI is now the part of their curriculum. But I think it has to be, if you are to really look at AI and the actual adoption and the next generation AI, what we talk about general AI or something which is a narrow AI. But I think if you really want to leverage on the data, the type of data which we have, or want to leverage on multiple use cases for a social good of India, I think it has to come through educational systems and through academia, which is not happening. I think that has to happen across all the types of institutes. It is happening only at IITs, IIMs, or some of those niche companies where fees is quite huge. If you just go, what is happening at engineering, they pass out this engineering and they start looking at courses for AI, blockchain, and this and that, and the awareness whether these courses are gonna help them for jobs. I think it has to come from government. It has to make AI and these things has to be mandatory. I think we are blessed with a very good national strategy, at least to begin with. But I think that strategy has to be nurtured every year. What we have got the national some strategy document, it was 2 to 3 years before document which we have. I think every year it has to be touched upon, just like every year we come up with the regulatory guidelines and other guidelines from government, just like a budget and all. But I think similarly, this AI for social good or AI for a country, it has to be a continuous exercise wherein education has to be a prime aspect, so that tomorrow generation and for them AI becomes a normal technology, just like what we are seeing as a mechanical engineering or a automobile engineering. That's how we have to look at it. That's just I wanted to highlight.
Sure. Thank you for that, Prasanna. And I think part of the answer lies with Siddharth, because that is what they are also doing with the rest of their efforts. So I suppose it's never too early to start. And if we do begin this with the whole education space as well, we will go far way. So I think I'm just going to wrap this up with one last question from the viewers, and this is open to any of you to pick up. And we have probably touched upon it when we're talking about the predictiveness of AI and things like that. But this is whether AI can help citizens as an early warning system. Again, I think this is derived from what we're facing right now and other, pandemic sort of situations that we might face. But do you believe that AI can serve as a sort of an alert or a warning system? Siddharth, I think you're on mute.
You're speaking on mute, Siddharth.
So I'm saying, I think we'll all agree that most of the countries are caught on the left foot and were thoroughly ill prepared. I think data set which was needed to train AI for creating predictive models is lying in silos in different parts of the ecosystem, including government being a big custodian. And I don't think we were prepared, but now I think post this pandemic, there is a need for all participants to come together and create a system of this sort, which is imminently doable. Frankly, technology is there. The algorithms are there, the talent is there, and the data is there as well now. But somehow all the parties had not come together to create a system like this. And I think it would be great to hear, Gaurav, maybe dive deep into it, but it's for sure possible. I would kind of try and wrap up because I have another engagement post this, but last comments for me is Jyotsna. I think World Economic Forum in 2018 had come out with the data that the division of task between human and machine is going to change significantly by 2022, predicting that the machines will take over a lot of tasks, as well as they have predicted around 113 million jobs created and all that. Now within 1 month, we're seeing 26 million people unemployed in the US itself. So whatever the panelists spoke about today in terms of going contactless or going digital with their supply chain and things, it will further increase the need for people who are trained on digital technologies, and AI is a key technology there as well. So I think whether it is using AI in education or teaching AI, I think both of these are imperatives that we can't look away from anymore, and huge investments are needed in both of these directions very soon. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth. And yes, I think that it's time we stop viewing AI as a threat. It's not something that's going to make the rest of us redundant, but yes, thank you for that. Dr. Lavneesh, Gaurav, Prasanna, if you have any thoughts on this query, then maybe we can just take those and then wrap up the session.
So technology-wise, the answer obviously is yes, and we have already seen use cases of prediction of say crop production or food demand forecasting based on satellite imagery analysis and whatnot. We are already working on, as SAP, we are working on simulation of the epidemic spread as we are moving. So that actually is helping. So technologically quite possible in terms of solutions. If it is not, then people will develop it fast. But then, it's the whole management of a program, management of that solution development is something that, very soon we will need to develop skills on.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Gaurav, if you have any concluding thoughts.
No, I think, look, there's a lot of stuff happening across the world in a lot of different areas. Like Dr. Lavneesh said, in food security, there's already steps happening. There's already steps happening on a surveillance standpoint. We've seen some of those happen in, China, Italy, etc., where drones are being used and maps are being created. I think from a disease standpoint, I've already mentioned a couple of times, there's stuff happening. So it's the AI can be incredibly helpful, but the disease is also moving at a very, very fast pace. So it's a race against time, and I hope that we'll be able to make it useful and make it worthwhile while we still have time.
Thanks. I suppose I can sum that up to say that our situations are racing ahead. Technology is advancing. We need to catch up. It's just all a race that we're on, and hopefully we'll be able to work together to make the most of what AI has to offer. Sarika, I think that we should be able to wrap this up now. Can I hand this over back to you?
Thank you, Jyotsna. And thank you, panelists. It was really enlightening discussion which we could have it. And I'm really glad there were many questions from the audience which are there. Sorry, we couldn't take it. And for the benefit of the audience, we'll just write that. Maybe the viewers can write back to us and we will be happy to take it offline with the panelists. But in most of the questions, I think with the last concluding remarks of Mr. Agarwal, Dr. Lavneesh Rana, and Sid and Prasanna, I think it got covered. So we are happy for that. Obviously, the question of the job opportunities and job losses with the AI continue. So that is something which is there. So we will obviously be having another series on the AI, as I mentioned, and we can take up other questions with the viewers in that one. With these last words, I'd like to thank you, all the panelists, Mr. Siddharth Gupta, Dr. Lavneesh Rana, Mr. Gaurav Agarwal, Mr. Prasanna Lohar, and very special thanks to you, Jyotsna, for moderating the session. Thank you, viewers, for virtually gathering here and listening to the discussion and enlightening us with your questions. Stay home, stay safe, and keep subscribe to FICCI's channel. And also, please do download the Arogya Setu app. FICCI has partnered with the government, and we are promoting that app highly. So we request you to kindly download it. That's one of the key mandates from our side. And since it's a tech seminar, so definitely the last line has to be on this one. So thank you all, and we look forward to have further discussions with you. Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.